Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The sun dipped behind the towering peaks of the ancient mountains, casting long shadows over the village. Aidan leaned against the wooden fence, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He could feel it again, that tightening in his chest, the subtle pull of something beyond his control. He knew what it meant. The curse was stirring. Behind him, Eli approached, his footsteps almost silent on the packed dirt. The younger twin, though only by a few minutes, carried an energy that always seemed to crackle in the air around him. Where Aidan was steady, deliberate, Eli was reckless, impulsive. And tonight, that recklessness was about to cost them both. "I found it," Eli said, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "I found a way to fix this." Aidan turned, one eyebrow raised in skepticism. "Fix what?" "The curse," Eli replied, as though it was obvious. His hands were shaking, not from fear but from excitement. "I spoke to the village elder. He said there's a way, something about the goddess of fate. If we find her, she can break the curse." Aidan frowned. The curse. That damn curse had haunted them their whole lives. Since they were born, their lives had been intertwined in a way no one else could understand. Whenever one gained power, strength, or vitality, the other would suffer. It was as if fate itself had bound them together, but not in the way brothers should be bound. No, this was a cruel twist of destiny, a punishment neither of them had earned. "And what does the elder know about gods?" Aidan asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Eli stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with the fire of conviction. "He knows more than you think. He said it's been done before, twins, just like us, who found the goddess and broke their chains." Aidan crossed his arms over his chest. "And what does it take?" "Some kind of sacrifice, I bet." Eli's face faltered for a moment, but the glint in his eyes remained. "He didn't say that." "But come on, Aidan. What other choice do we have? We can't keep living like this, always waiting for the other to fall." Aidan wanted to argue, to tell Eli that it wasn't worth the risk. But deep down, he knew his brother was right. This wasn't living. Every time one of them grew stronger, the other grew weaker. The last time Eli had tapped into his magic, Aidan had collapsed, barely clinging to life. They were two sides of a coin, destined to either save each other or destroy each other. "Fine," Aidan said, pushing himself off the fence. "But if we do this, we do it my way. No rushing in, no half-baked plans. We need to be smart." Eli grinned, the reckless energy returning to his features. "Smart, right. We'll be smart about it." Aidan rolled his eyes. "Let's just hope we find the goddess before the curse takes one of us for good." They left the village at dawn, the cold mountain air biting at their skin. Aidan had packed carefully, bringing enough supplies for the journey ahead. Eli, on the other hand, had barely brought anything beyond his sword and a few rations. Typical, Aidan thought. Eli always believed he could rely on his magic to get him through any situation. The first few days of the journey were uneventful, but tension hung between them like a storm cloud. Neither wanted to admit it, but they both knew that the deeper they went into the mountains, the closer they came to something dangerous, something that could either save them or destroy them. On the fourth night, as they camped near the base of the mountain, Aidan noticed the first signs of trouble. Eli had been practicing his magic again, using small bursts of fire to light the campfire. But every time he summoned the flame, Aidan felt his own strength wane, his muscles growing weak and his vision blurring. "Stop it," Aidan snapped, his voice sharper than he intended. Eli looked up, his hands still glowing with residual magic. What? Stop using your magic. Every time you do, it drains me. Eli frowned, his hands lowering. I didn't realize, that's the problem, Aiden said, rubbing his temples. You never realize. You just act without thinking. Eli's jaw tightened. I'm trying to help us, Aiden. I'm trying to get stronger so we can survive this. And what good is your strength if it kills me in the process? For a moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the cold night. Aiden regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth, but it was too late to take them back. Eli stood abruptly, his eyes hard. Fine. I won't use it. But don't blame me if we end up dead because I couldn't. Before Aiden could respond, Eli stormed off into the woods, his footsteps fading into the distance. Aiden let out a long breath, staring into the flames. This was exactly what he had feared. The curse was more than just a physical toll, it was a wedge, driving them apart. Slowly but surely, hours passed, and Aiden's eyes grew heavy. Just as he was about to drift off to sleep, he heard a sound, footsteps, not Eli's, but something else. Something, heavier. He stood, reaching for his sword just as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, towering over him, with skin like cracked stone and eyes that glowed with an eerie light. Aiden recognized it immediately, the guardian of the crossroads. So, you've come, the guardian said, its voice like grinding rocks. The cursed twins. Aiden gripped his sword tighter. We're here to break the curse. The guardian chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Aiden's spine. Many have tried. Few have succeeded. We're different, Aiden said, his voice steady. We're not here to fail. The guardian stepped closer, its massive form casting a long shadow over Aiden. To break the curse, you must first understand it. And to understand it, you must face your deepest fear. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. He had faced many fears in his life, but this was something else entirely. He glanced toward the trees, hoping to see Eli returning, but there was no sign of his brother. The guardian raised a hand, and suddenly, the world around Aiden shifted. The campfire disappeared, replaced by a cold, dark void. In the distance, he saw Eli, standing alone on the edge of a cliff. And there, in front of him, was a figure cloaked in shadow, whispering words Aiden couldn't hear. Aiden tried to move, to call out to his brother, but his body refused to obey. He was trapped, forced to watch as the shadowy figure reached out to Eli, offering something, power, perhaps. And Eli, his impulsive nature taking hold, reached out to accept it. No. Aiden shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the void. He watched in horror as Eli's hand closed around the offered power, and in that instant, Aiden felt his own strength drain away. His legs buckled, his vision darkened, and he collapsed to the ground, helpless as his brother's choice sealed their fate. Aiden woke with a start, gasping for breath. The fire was still burning, and the guardian was gone, but the memory of the vision lingered, heavy in his chest. He had seen his deepest fear, the one he had been trying to deny, that Eli's ambition, his hunger for power, would be their undoing. Just as Aiden sat up, Eli returned from the woods, his expression unreadable. Where did you go? Aiden asked, still shaken from the vision. Eli shrugged. Just needed some space. Aiden didn't push further. He wasn't ready to share what he had seen, what he had felt. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and he knew it wouldn't be easily removed. The journey continued, each step heavier than the last. They reached the haunted forest by the end of the week, a twisted maze of trees that seemed to whisper secrets as they passed. Aidan could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on them both, and for the first time, he wondered if they would survive this journey. The forest played tricks on their minds. Every so often, Aidan would catch glimpses of figures in the shadows, Eli, but not Eli. A twisted version of his brother, one consumed by power and ambition, eyes glowing with dark magic. Aidan shook his head, trying to clear the visions from his mind. But the doubt remained. Could he trust Eli to make the right choice when the time came? Or would his brother's reckless nature lead them both to ruin? The tension between them grew, unspoken but palpable. They spoke less, each lost in their own thoughts, their own fears. And the forest, with its dark whispers, seemed to feed on that silence, growing thicker, more oppressive with every step. At the heart of the forest, they encountered the oracle, a figure cloaked in mist and shadow. She was neither young nor old, her features shifting like smoke. She spoke in riddles, her voice like the rustling of leaves. The oracle's presence seemed to darken the very air around her. As her shifting, mist-like form hovered before the twins, Aidan felt a familiar pull of dread settle in his chest. Eli, standing beside him, clenched his fists, ever the more impatient of the two. The balance of sacrifice, the oracle whispered, her voice ethereal, as though carried on the wind. Your fates are intertwined. To break one chain, another must be forged. What does that mean? Eli asked, stepping forward. His tone was demanding, filled with the same impulsiveness that had carried him through their journey so far. We came here to find out how to break the curse. No more riddles. The oracle's gaze shifted to Aidan, her eyes, dark and unfathomable, meeting his. The answer lies not in power, but in the willingness to let go. To save one, the other must be willing to lose everything. Aidan's heart sank as he tried to process her words. Let go of what? He asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. The oracle did not reply directly. Instead, her form began to dissipate, her final words lingering in the air. The goddess awaits at the end of your path. Only through selflessness will you see the truth. And then she was gone, leaving the twins alone in the oppressive silence of the forest. Eli scowled, kicking at the dirt in frustration. That didn't tell us anything. Just more cryptic nonsense. Let go? Sacrifice? What does that even mean? Aidan felt the weight of the oracle's words settle in his chest. He glanced at Eli, who was pacing now, his frustration clear. For once, Aidan held his tongue, unwilling to voice the terrible thought that had begun to form in his mind. What if the only way to save them both was for one to give up everything? What if one of them had to die for the other to live? They continued their journey in silence. The once vibrant, crackling energy between them had faded, replaced by a thick tension neither could break. The haunted forest thinned out, giving way to a rocky path that led up into the mountains. Every step felt heavier, as though the burden of their fate weighed down more with each passing day. Days bled into nights as they climbed higher and higher, the air growing thinner, colder. The twins spoke less, and when they did, it was mostly out of necessity. Eli's impatience had only grown, his frustration at the slow pace evident in every scowl, every sharp word. Aidan, for his part, had grown more contemplative, the oracle's warning playing over and over in his mind. What did she mean by balance? What would they have to give up? By the time they reached the entrance to the labyrinth, where the goddess was said to reside, Aidan's strength was nearly spent. Eli seemed to sense it too. Every time he pushed his magic further, every time he grew stronger, Aidan weakened. Their bond, their curse, was pulling tighter, the final strain just within reach. the entrance to the labyrinth was a jagged archway, carved from stone that seemed to shimmer in the faint moonlight. Beyond it, the darkness was thick, impenetrable, and filled with the whispers of something ancient and dangerous. Eli took a deep breath, glancing back at Aidan, his expression grim. "This is it," Eli said, his voice quieter than usual. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." Aidan nodded, though his heart was heavy with the weight of what was to come. "We'll find her. And when we do, we'll end this." They stepped through the archway together, the shadows swallowing them whole. Inside, the labyrinth was a twisting maze of narrow passages and towering stone walls. The air was cold, and the silence pressed in on them like a physical force. It didn't take long for the magic of the labyrinth to start working on them. Every turn felt disorienting, every path seemed to loop back on itself. Worse, the curse began to manifest in ways neither had expected. At one point, Aidan felt his legs give out beneath him, the strength drained from his body as if he'd been struck down by an invisible force. He gasped for air, clutching his chest, feeling the life seep out of him. Eli, sensing his brother's pain, rushed to his side, but his presence only made it worse. The closer they were to each other, the stronger the curse pulled at them. "We can't stay like this," Aidan wheezed, forcing himself back to his feet. "The curse, it's getting stronger." Eli nodded, though his expression was filled with a mixture of guilt and frustration. "We'll find a way out. We have to." But as they delved deeper into the labyrinth, the curse only worsened. Every moment they were together brought them closer to the edge, Aidan weakening, Eli growing stronger in a way that frightened even him. The curse had always been a burden, but now it felt like a noose tightening around their throats. Finally, after what felt like days of wandering, they reached the heart of the labyrinth, a vast, open chamber, illuminated by an eerie, otherworldly light. At the center of the chamber stood a figure, her form both beautiful and terrible, her eyes glowing with the same cold light that filled the room, the goddess of fate. Aidan and Eli approached her cautiously, the weight of their journey pressing down on them. The goddess regarded them with an unreadable expression, her gaze moving between them as though measuring their worth. "You have come seeking release," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But to break the curse that binds you, you must first understand its nature." Eli stepped forward, his voice firm. "We know what the curse is. One of us gets stronger, the other one dies. We want to stop it." The goddess tilted her head, her expression still inscrutable. "And what would you sacrifice to free yourselves?" Aidan's stomach dropped. He glanced at Eli, whose face remained determined, though there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes," Eli said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. The goddess's gaze shifted to Aidan. "And you?" Aidan hesitated. He had seen this moment coming, had feared it since the oracle had spoken of sacrifice. He knew, deep down, that there was only one way to truly break the curse. He began, but the words caught in his throat. The goddess watched them in silence, her expression unreadable. Then, with a wave of her hand, she conjured a vision before them, a reflection of their future. In it, Aidan stood alone, his face hollow, his eyes filled with grief. Eli was gone, sacrificed to break the curse. The vision shifted again, showing Eli alone, standing on the same spot, the weight of his brother's death heavy on his shoulders. "Only one can survive," the goddess said. "To save one, the other must be willing to give up everything. That is the nature of the curse. Balance through sacrifice." Aidan's heart pounded in his chest as the full weight of her words settled over him. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Eli said quietly. She's right. One of us has to die. Aidan looked at his brother, seeing the resolve in his eyes, but also the fear. Eli was always the reckless one, always willing to dive headfirst into danger without thinking about the consequences. But this was different. "I won't let you die for me," Aidan said, his voice breaking. "I can't." Eli's jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. "And I won't let you die for me, either." The silence between them was deafening, filled with the unspoken truth that neither of them could bear to lose the other. But they had come to the end of the path. There was no more time for doubt, no more room for hesitation. In that moment, Aidan understood what the oracle had meant by the balance of sacrifice. It wasn't about one of them dying for the other, it was about both of them being willing to give up their own lives, to let go of their fear, their pride, their ambition, in order to save the other. "I'll do it," Aidan said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "I'll sacrifice myself." Eli's eyes widened in shock. "No, you won't." "I will," Aidan interrupted, his gaze locked on his brother's. "Because I trust you. I trust that you'll live for both of us." For a long moment, Eli didn't speak. Then, slowly, he nodded, his eyes filled with a mix of grief and gratitude. "I'll make it worth it. I swear." The goddess stepped forward, her hand raised, ready to complete the ritual. But just as she was about to strike, Aidan and Eli both spoke at the same time. "I'll do it." The goddess paused, her eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "I'll do it," they repeated in unison, their voices steady, their hands reaching out toward each other. The goddess's expression softened, and for the first time, a flicker of understanding passed through her eyes. "Ah," she said softly. "You have learned." With a wave of her hand, the chamber filled with light. The curse, which had bound the twins for so long, began to unravel, its dark tendrils dissolving into the air around them. Aidan felt a weight lift from his chest, and for the first time in years, he could breathe freely. The curse was broken. As the light faded, the goddess smiled faintly. "You have both sacrificed. And through that sacrifice, you have found balance." She turned, her form dissolving into mist. "Your fates are no longer bound by the chains of destiny. Go, and live free." The twins stood in silence as the goddess disappeared, the weight of their journey settling over them like a final sigh. Aidan turned to Eli, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "We made it," he said softly. Eli smiled, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "Yeah. We did." And together, they left the labyrinth, side by side, their bond stronger than ever before.